Today we'll be replacing the pigtail on an IP camera, bullet style. These are the things that you will need. A specialized tool to be able to open up the locking nut on the bullet camera. We used a Dremel to cut a hole out here on a flathead screwdriver so that way it would fit around the pigtail and connect on either side. You'll need a Phillips head screwdriver, 5/64 bit or the Allen key that came with your IP camera, precision Phillips head screwdriver, pliers, the razor from a utility knife, a pair of gloves so we don't damage the lens, a replacement pigtail, thread locker, and an IP camera with a bad pigtail. So this is what a burned pigtail looks like. They didn't cover it up and seal it from the weather. Water gets in there and can really damage it. We'll start off by disassembling the housing. There are 4 screws here. It's a good idea to have a container next to you to hold your screws so that way you don't lose any. And if you're really not familiar with the product that you're disassembling, it's always a good idea to take pictures before you remove the screws so you can go back and put them in their proper place. This is where we will be putting the specialized screwdriver to use. So we have screws to remove from this IR board located here and here. Just going to take these off really quick. So we're going to have to remove screws from the board here. These risers right there and right there, and screws there, there, and up here and right there. Let's get to it. Here is our 10-pin connector. Right here, and the pigtail runs down in and then out the other end around here. Do have another board underneath that I'd like to get out. So as you can see here, right there are 6 pins that come up, and that will connect to this board right here. So the nature of these connectors is that as they're used, they'll expand and contract due to heat. Sometimes they can be a real pain to remove. given that this one is bad and we don't care about it, I'm going to go ahead and snip the line. Makes it a heck of a lot easier to get out. Remove the wires from the connector by using a razor to lift the levers that locks down the wires. Be careful. To easily feed the pigtail through the parts, wrap the end tightly with electrical tape. Feed the new pigtail through the parts in the reversed order that they were removed. Imagine that you're placing them onto a stack, first in, last out. In order to get the weather seal in there, just gonna pack it tightly. As you can see, I have enough room exposed here to be able to put the connector back on and plug it into the camera. But first, we're going to tighten the locking nut. I'm just going to kind of hold it in place and turn the housing. Snap the wires back into the connector following this pin out. So I've applied thread sealer after replacing all the pins. We're going to connect it right into the board now. This screw here connects to the board below. Same with this screw over here. We have a riser here and a riser here that tighten this board down to the housing. This screw here does the same, and there's one up here as well that also. Now we're going to inspect the camera for operation. Just gonna seat the IR board on here. The IR board is now on. We have a 12 volt 1 amp power supply. As you can see, a green LED comes on. Let's cup our hands over the camera. Hold out any light. I can see that the IR came on. The wavelength on the IR on these is 850 nanometers. So if you cup your hands to close out any light at all from coming in and peer into that hole, eventually the day and night switching will come on and turn on the IR board. You'll be able to see very lightly red within the LEDs. Before we cover up the lens, I like to take a lens cloth, just wipe down the area. One of the great things about wearing gloves when you're doing this is that if you happen to accidentally touch the lens, you're not going to leave fingerprints. So as you're putting this back together, make sure you seat this in here properly. It's grooved to fit. This one will also sit right in place. And run it up to the camera, kind of snap it in. So this is the top of our camera. We're going to orient it this way. Start by just dropping in the screws. The Phillips head screw, and we'll go underneath the casing. I'm going to torque these down just an eighth of a turn. Put the sun shield back on. Here we are with the good pigtail. Looks a lot better, right? Thanks for watching.